have a discussion with my agent about
Okay,
this.
so it turns
Yeah.
out I hit the go live button instead of the record button.
Oh shit!
Hello, Internet. Have a look around.
All right, let's try
I'm
that
not
again.
making all those same jokes again.
Don't worry about it. Greetings, viewers. I am Johann the Meat Man. For all intents and purposes, I am an internet nobody. But today we will be teaching you something interesting.
Hmm.
Not Warhammer this time.
Oh, it's, I believe it. Battle mechs, which is something completely outside of my knowledge as well.
Yes.
To introduce myself, I am Alfonso Miguel, your dashing robot husbando.
He's not lying about that dashing part either. Dang. I'm Saltius. You retired battle mech pilot today, I guess.
Where's your neuro helmet, soldier?
It's in the mech, which is in the garage. 350 swapping it. I don't want to talk about it.
And I am Prince Victor. I am Steiner-Davion. I am a veteran of sorts, I suppose you could say.
Today,
So you adopted the whole lore structure.
yeah,
Of POC. I like it. I
he
want to hear
he
more.
adopted an
I'm sure we'll get
entire
there.
existing character. Let's just say that.
Oh, okay.
That's lit.
Okay.
Indeed.
Yes.
Keep doing that. We had the Emperor here last week.
Mhm.
I was.
Oh yeah. Next week we have the Dockmaster for the Imperial Navy. Anyway, today we go over battle mechs.
Mm-hmm.
Mechwarrior, Battletech.
Well, principally and specifically battle mechs, not the universe at large.
That's a great first question. I know Battletech and I know Mechwarrior because I had it way back in the day in the ancient times. I had the Mechwarrior game.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference between the terminology? There's a lot of different names right off the bat of Battletech, Battlemech, and Mechwarrior. Is there a universal difference, or is it just a terminology difference?
Yes, the universal
It depends on what you're applying it to.
So a Mechwarrior
Is my
typically
understanding.
refers to the mech pilot, depending on, where they're from or whatever, but they're usually called, they are sometimes, but not always called Mechwarriors.
Okay.
To get into a little more specifics, you have the titles for games, and then you have the titles for people in universe. In the game sense, Battletech refers to the top-down viewing mechs from above and commanding them. Mechwarrior is from inside the cockpit as an individual person. In terms of the universe, a Mechwarrior is the pilot of a battle mech.
Right. And the battle mech is actually the armed walker machine that does the stuff. Like that's like I don't want to say the Space Marine of the universe, but like the headlining symbol of the universe is the battle mech, and the Mechwarrior is the one who pilots it. And Battletech, I'm guessing that is then like you said before, the strategery, the sort of top-down view of the thing.
That is the setting overall.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the name of the setting itself. Okay, cool.
Just to elaborate all amount further, there is such a thing as an omni-mech, which is a specific type of battle mech. But battle mech covers all of the walking war machines specifically.
Cool.
They are, as far as I'm aware, almost 99%, if not 100% of the time, powered by a stable internal fusion reactor.
Yes.
Interesting choice.
They do explode when sufficiently damaged, which is fun, but
Yeah, I would assume that if you damage that area enough, it would become super critical from a scientific standpoint. That's why I use RTGs, because they're self-extinguishing. They don't go super critical.
Technically,
way less power
a battle mech should not explode due to its reactor, but we have something that is often referred to as stack poling, which is the explosion of a battle mech reactor due to the author Michael A. Stackpole extensively writing about mechs detonating when suffering catastrophic damage to their center.
Oh, so there's almost sort of a lampshade there, like a little bit of a conceit that...
Yes.
Okay, that's interesting. And it also could have just been a magazine explosion. I mean,
yes.
you guys, a lot of art ordnance on this thing.
Not always, because we'll get into that later. There are purely energy-equipped mechs.
Well, capacitors go boom.
Really?
Trust me, I've licked one before. It did not end well for me or the capacitor.
Forklift mechs.
I had to replace the whole face gasket. It was just gone. It was just...
Yeah. They are usually armored pretty well, but not always.
What kind of scale are we talking here? Like sidewise? I know that obviously the sizes are going to vary, but like,
so
how big we talking on
remind
average?
me again, Victor, because I have not sufficiently looked it up enough times to put it into the back of my mind.
So,
what's the difference between a Star League ton and a regular ton?
I don't believe that there is technically any difference. I believe that ton is a metric ton in Battletech.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But for context to how much armor a mech carries, the Victor battle mech carries an AC-20, which is basically a multi-shell firing cannon. It fires 200 120 millimeter shells in a span of 6 seconds. This is equivalent to 20 damage
dear Lord.
in the Battletech game.
That's 120 millimeter cannon.
Yes, on full auto.
Okay, that's huge and terrifying.
And mechs can shrug that off without severe consequences.
That is actually genuinely insane. I love it.
That is to say, heavier mechs. If you were to nail a light mech with that, it
will be gone.
Yeah. If it survives, it's not going to be walking right. We'll just say that.
Interesting.
Because
I always imagine them as more of like, not in the tonnage of an attack helicopter, but sort of in that ethos. But I guess that would be a lighter mech. So they do have different classes. You kind of mentioned just now.
Yeah. It goes by like weight class, and then also like what role they fill.
Okay, that makes sense.
They are 100% of the time armed. There's no point to them not being armed.
So we don't have any construction bots. We don't have any farming.
They
mech,
do,
we don't have any...
but they aren't. Okay. But they aren't called battle mechs.
Oh, that would make sense because battle is right in the name.
They're industrial mechs, or they're agri mechs, or.
Okay.
Yeah, shit like that.
And in that case, there is a distinction to be made. Some mechs that are not battle mechs, most often, though occasionally it does happen, do run off of internal combustion engines, fission engines, and fuel cells as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
What else? They are almost always controlled via... Actually, I'm not too clear on that one.
Alright. So you have a few different control mechanisms. One of the most critical is the myomer musculature. It basically is electrically responding muscle that moves the mech's limbs, very similar to how biological muscle works. The second aspect is the neural helmet, which transfers the pilot's sense of balance to the machine.
That's really interesting. I love... This is the one thing that I do know about Battletech is the existence of the myomer. And the myomer was a huge inspiration for me for a lot of my designs, because it's such a good idea.
For the longest time, I actually thought that the Neuro Helmet controlled the entire thing, and then I went and watched a certain cartoon, and it's like, oh, they have control panels and shit.
Yes,
which would make
don't
sense.
exactly have sophisticated enough equipment to control the machine entirely via mental.
They have.
You would have to have like an AI or something as an interpreter at that point. So it does make sense for them to have manual control.
And it looks fairly simple too, from what I remember. It's like you've got a throttle for moving forward. I'm not quite. I think they turn via turning like the throttlers. No, and then they have a fucking control stick, joystick for the.
So it's like a HOTAS
torso.
almost.
Yeah, pretty much. In fact, Salty over here uses his HOTAS for battle.
Very cool.
For Mechwarrior.
Very cool.
Generally, a battle mech will be controlled by a series of joysticks, foot pedals, and control panels. Usually, everything you need easy access to is on the joysticks, including the throttle control. The foot pedals are often used for the torso twisting system, which allows the mech to bend at the waist, twist at the waist, to align for better fire.
Right.
And
okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and they do have arms.
Yes.
And how those arms work very much varies from mech to mech.
Yes.
Yeah. There's some mechs that they have arms in the sense that they have rotating bits on the side that turns the gun up and down and side to side a little bit.
Yeah, sort of like almost like a sponson turret at that point.
The right.
Whereas some of them have full manipulators.
Yes.
Yeah.
We typically call those battle fists. Some have.
Joke, Jen. I'm not going to touch it. Do not fist the battle mech.
I hate to say it, but battle fist is a fairly new term.
Oh.
Is it? Okay, good. I was going to say someone has to have been in the writing room and been like, "Hang on, that's not probably not a good idea."
Yeah.
What is the older term then?
He was usually just referred to as a hand actuator.
Ah,
sorry. Okay, that makes sense. Is that? I think that's kind of a good overview.
Yeah. We'll go down to roles and classes. So for classes, we're typically referring to weight class, in which there are 5.
Theoretically 6. 5 realistically.
Okay.
Got it.
You've got
one of those. It's one of those things where it's. Yeah. I like it when it does that kind of thing, where it isn't just, oh, these are the defined things in the universe and everything fits within it. When it's got a little bit of weirdness and playroom, I much more enjoy that. Personally.
So you've got light, which is, I'm not sure the lower end, but they go
20 to 20 to 35 tons.
Okay, yeah. And then you have medium, which is, I want to say, 40 to 55. Yeah.
Okay.
Heavy, which is 60 to 75, I want to say. Yeah, 75. Because then you have assault mechs, which are 80 to 100. After that, you get into what are called super heavy mechs, which are 100 tons plus. And those
are 105 to 200.
Okay. Yeah, those are super rare, too, as far as I've heard.
I just saw how tall the Victor is, and it... Okay, I now understand the scale of this. That's terrifying.
Yeah, it's like the head almost universally contains the single-man cockpit.
14 meters tall for that assault. The one that you mentioned before, the Victor, I just saw. And now I understand the scale of this. Okay. These are huge.
Mm-hmm. These are walking buildings.
Yes.
Yeah, they are genuinely. That's obscene. I love it.
What's the sixth one?
So there was at one point in time ultralights, which were consistent of mechs under 20 tons. Okay. However, I believe they have been decanonized.
That makes sense. That would be tough to explain with, say, power armor, or not power armor, battle armor, which they're a whole own video.
Right.
To give you some examples, some notable examples of, the classes of mechs. The stereotypical light mech would be a Locust or a Commando.
Okay.
A stereotypical medium mech is the you've got the Hunchback, and then you have, I don't actually know that many medium mechs.
Centurion, Blackjack.
Yeah, those two.
Let's see. Okay.
Heavies would be the Marauder or the Mad Cat. Or Timberwolf if you're a filthy savage. Assault mechs, notable ones. Everyone hates the Charger, but does things very good. And then the Atlas, which is literally the maximum range of weight you can make a mech. And there are
that you can without it being super heavy.
Yeah.
Yes.
And for a time, it was only assault mechs. There were...
Oh, so that... Yeah, okay. So did that change because of an exterior power creep? Like from an outside of universe power creep? Or was that a thing that was written in and then it sort of reflected into the books? Or reflected into the games?
Technically, they have always existed as far as what was written down. The game was always comprised of the light, medium, heavy, and assault class. When the lore was written out specifically for how battle mechs were invented, the Mackie, which was a 100-ton mech, was the first mech, and then they branched out from there as people experimented with the tech.
And it should be
so
noted,
it started at 100 tons.
And it should be noted that the Mackie at the time was actually pretty lightly armed compared to most. Because it was a PPC, an AC-10, and some lasers, I want to say.
2 medium lasers.
2 medium lasers, yeah. Whereas you look at the Atlas, it has the prime example. One sec.
The 3028 version has an LRM-20, an SRM-6, an AC-20, 4 medium lasers.
Yeah.
Goodness.
And that's not even the fully updated version.
No. There are far more modern versions out there. Then you get into roles. You have scout mechs. Those can range anywhere from light to assault. Some would argue that, say, the Charger is a heavy scout mech, quote unquote. But
okay,
that's not what it's for. Because
if you use it that way, you're crazy.
Yeah. For reference, the Charger has 5 small lasers for being 80 tons. The rest is all...
So it's kind of underarmed.
Not kind of, it's very much inadequate for ranged combat. But the rest of it is armor and engines. So it kind of makes up for it.
So it's just a flying cannonball.
Sort of.
I'd describe it that way, yeah, actually.
Oh shoot!
You have, mainline, like, frontal combat type mechs. Prime examples, you've got, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, so that would be... I was just going to actually ask for some examples of the roles. I was going to say, is like that your primary, like, is that a role, or is that just sort of like a grouping of roles?
It's pretty much like what... Imagine, it's essentially like a rifle... The quintessential infantry rifleman. This is what these mechs would be. We're talking Marauders, maybe, kind of. The Hunchback, though it's a bit limited in range.
Are we talking about the Brawler? Brawler?
Yeah, sort of like a frontline brawler and, like, just frontline combat mech in general.
If you were talking about that, I would say that your better examples are mechs like the Centurion, where it has long-range weapons, but then more weapons come into play as it closes distance.
Yeah. The Atlas is the quintessential, like, example of this. Because the LRM-20 is one of the best long-range weapons outside of, like, tactical artillery choices.
Okay.
And then as you close, you get into, like, medium laser range, which, it's okay. And then you get into the autocannon, the AC-20 and the SRM-6. Those are both very short-range weapons.
Right.
So I would classify weapon ranges in about 4 ways.
Yeah.
You have your long-range weapons, which are your LRM-20s, your AC-2s, weapons that reach over 20 hexes in the tabletop.
Yeah.
These weapons...
For context of the people that don't play the tabletop, what kind of range are we talking here from a... Like, are we talking, like, outside of line of sight sort of thing?
So,
like, I think it's like...
meters.
What? Sorry.
600 meters would be the low end of long range.
Okay. So not quite outside of line of sight, but
I was actually going to say, like,
be...
isn't each hex like 100 meters or something?
30 meters.
30 meters, okay.
Really? Okay.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense.
And then medium range weapons, I would say, fits into the bracket of 10 to 20 hexes, or 300 to about 600 meters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Short range weapons are basically anything that reaches out to about 300 meters, give or take a bit, which is your SRMs, your medium lasers, and your AC-20s, for instance.
Yeah.
And then basically point-blank weapons or melee weapons, small lasers, machine guns, and your battle fists, your hatchets, that kind of thing.
Yes,
Right.
they do give these things melee weapons, capable of cutting buildings in half.
Terrifying concept. I love it.
Oh, yeah. They actually have a Japanese faction that just has a giant fucking katana.
Of course. Is it the I hope it's called like the Omega Dachi or something silly.
It's the Draconis Combine run by House Kurita.
Oh, I just meant the katana.
Oh.
So like, instead of an Odachi or a Nodachi, it's the Omega Dachi. It's the final Dachi.
It's
final sword.
Just like I don't like I'm only limited to like game knowledge, but it's like an assault katana for an assault mech, or like a medium katana for a medium.
Okay. So they just calls them katana. That's fine.
Yeah, it's mech katana. Then you have like close range fighters, like the Charger, the Hunchback. The Hunchback, by the way, is outfitted with 2 medium lasers and an AC-20, and a small laser.
These would be like what, like the striker unit role? Kind of
These are the get up in your face and make you die.
Got it.
It's very much their job is to turn the fight into a barroom brawl, is how I'd describe it.
Okay. So is there any differentiation between like lightweight close range and heavyweight close range, or is there any differentiation between like weight classes in that way or armor in that way for the roles? Because it seems like the roles are a little bit more.
I'd say like if you get like into lighter close range, you'd probably be thinking of like a skirmisher. While as once you get up heavier in the weight class, close range just means getting close and fisticuffs.
So essentially, the difference between a skirmisher and a brawler is the speed and the armor.
Yeah.
Got it.
Low speed, high armor is a brawler. High speed, low armor is a skirmisher.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, like I said, keep in mind I am a novice. He is the expert.
And it does.
If you
It seems like the roles do vary.
Yeah.
During depending on the game, like, and that's what I would assume is that this has obviously been changed constantly for balance, and probably in universe somebody might call something a scout when it might other people might be saying, well, I mean, it's got enough guns on it, we're just gonna call it a striker.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
So technically, the first question you asked, no, the game rules have actually been consistent since almost the inception of Battletech.
Really?
It has never been rebalanced in any large-scale way since the early 90s.
Oh, that's got to be super interesting for, like, people doing... I bet you that makes the writing easier, first off, because everything is kind of set in stone.
Yes, it is consistent. And that consistency is one of the things that really makes Battletech easy to pick up. And someone just learning the rules now could play against somebody who started around the time I was born and still managed to play with each other without too many difficulties.
There's not 30 different codexes to pick up.
That's super interesting, coming from the context of, you know, Warhammer and other things.
But yeah, Vic, if you disagree with like anything I'm saying, just let me know, because I'm trying to like.
We'd rather put the right information out.
Yeah, I'm.
We're here
on
to
one
learn.
hand,
Yes,
We're here to learn.
yeah,
yes.
I'm trying to spin a yarn and be interesting, but I'm also trying to teach. So
Yes. So we are here to be educated by the expert.
So, in response to your second question, yes, it is very easy for mechs to be reclassified just by what somebody is seeing the mech doing and assuming its role is. It really is pretty blurry, the difference between a scout and a skirmisher, for instance. And would be very easy.
I've noticed that even reflected within the game. The Mechwarrior 5 is the main game I've played, but within the game's context, I've seen that reflected. You got 16 different variants of the Irby, but the variants are completely based on what the guns are attached to them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which makes sense. I mean, like, if you take a Bradley and you put a rocket launcher, or you put a tow missile launcher on the top of it, like, okay, that can do it can do a limited anti-tank roll now. Yeah. Where if it's just got a 20mm cannon, I don't want to see a tank in a 30-mile radius of that thing.
Right.
Some dude with some giant brass balls in Ukraine would disagree with you, but yeah.
Right, well, we're not going to talk about when they... I know what you're talking about.
Leaving the intended role.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, it's exiting its intended role, but...
Yeah.
I kind of understand what you mean, where the configuration... So each mech may not be... It isn't locked into a role. It's based off of its loadout and the way that it's set up, and even possibly the pilot.
Exactly.
Okay, that's super
interesting. A good instance of this would be something like the Jenner. It's 35 tons, runs at about 110 kilometers per hour, carries 4 medium lasers and an SRM-4. It is usually used as a scout, but it very easily operates as a skirmisher as well. And just depending on how the pilot's handling it, it can do both roles.
Yeah.
Okay.
These mechs, you can also switch out their equipment altogether to do all kinds of other things. Sensors jamming, munitions jamming, targeting, computer jamming, stuff like that.
So there's different
enhanced sensors, yeah, all kinds of shit.
Yeah, there's different packages and sets and equipment that can be sort of swapped in and out to really needle this down into what you want.
I hate to call it this, but it's essentially like mecha Legos. But
it kind of reminds me in that way, sort of like the old school, like Armored Core 2, where there was a part and a tuning for everything.
Basically, yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Then we're on the same page on that one.
Also,
the fact that it moves at, what did you say it moves at? 100 what miles an hour?
110.
110 kilometers per hour.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, that's still really fast.
For,
it's like 60
for 35 tons. And bipedal, too.
Yeah.
So, one of the core things about Battletech that kind of acts as its foundation is that the original rule set designed all of the machines to be completely customizable. You can make any machine that you can conceive of in any number of configurations with the core rules.
Okay.
Yeah.
And from a rules and gameplay standpoint from the tabletop game, are you normally are you building one of these guys and then being part of a group, or are you building multiple? And if so, does someone have a spreadsheet or an Excel sheet software, like an Excel sheet, so that people can figure this shit?
The construction rules are actually extremely simple. This was stuff that I picked up almost immediately upon getting my hands on the game. Essentially, you have your tonnage of your mech, which is the basis of all machines. And then you put in each component until you have filled up your tonnage and available slots for
okay. So it's sort of a mass and volume thing where the tonnage you can only have up to a certain amount, and then you only have a certain amount of slots to put things into.
It's another mechanic that translates very well to the games.
Yes.
That's
both
super
Mechwarrior
cool.
and the online and the Battletech.
Yep.
So theoretically, you could make just one machine and customize it until you're happy with it, or you could make many, or you could just use pre-made machines.
That's super cool.
Another role is the support mech, which is just as varied as, say, like a brawler or a striker. A support mech can do anything, like I said earlier, from like jamming sensors to enhancing allied sensors. But they can also do like more direct support. Like the rifleman is excellent anti-air and excellent long-range like direct fire support. While you also have artillery mechs that technically fall under support, which would be like the longbow or the catapult or even the archer. And these are, almost all of them are missile boats, to my knowledge.
So when we get into support fire, you're just generally looking at mechs that are relying on long-range weapons specifically.
Yeah.
LRMs, light autocannons, artillery pieces. There are also even a few artillery missile launchers in existence.
The Arrow 4.
Oh, so the artillery missile would be like MLRS kind of thing, but on legs.
Less like.
Kind of odd?
Are you familiar with the MGM-52 Lance?
Not offhand.
So it was this giant fuck-off missile that they launched from the back of a modified M113.
Okay. Well, yeah, because everything's off of a modified
So
M113.
essentially a multi-kilometer ranged ground-to-ground missile system.
Yeah.
That is awesome. I can see why they would want that to be mobile, because that would be a really juicy target.
Aerofours can actually also use nuclear warheads as well, so there's that.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
We have nukes in play.
Well, technically, yes.
Okay.
If you really want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, the Ares conventions banned the use of nuclear weapons, and so they aren't actually that common in Battletech. However,
remind me again, didn't the Star League Accords nullify the Ares conventions?
I don't believe so.
I could have swore I heard that somewhere.
Well, okay. So during the early eras of Battletech, we're talking the actual Star League era, the reunification war, and of course anything that the periphery decides to do because they don't care about anyone else's rules. There you see a fair amount of nuclear weapon usage. It was really the first and second succession wars that set together the agreements to say we're going to stop nuking each other because this is really not going to allow humanity to continue to exist.
Yep.
It was sort of instead of a mutually assured destruction kind of thing, it was like, okay, look, listen, dude, I want your land, and if the land is bombed out wasteland, it's no use to me. So let's just not eat. Neither of us is gonna just we're good.
Well, the thing is, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm just gonna realize nobody benefited from it.
The benefits long term are very, very limited. There was also the problem that they were basically losing the ability to produce technology, and as such regressed very heavily to the point where it was basically computer technology vanished on a lot of worlds, much less the ability to travel between stars, which is why jump ships became no-goes for shooting.
Yeah.
I see. So from the roles in the classes, I guess, is there any ones that we may have missed besides? So we had like the scout, sniper, striker, and they aren't amorphous, I'm guessing, but they aren't. I'm trying to think of like a.
They aren't solid.
Right,
either.
They're sort of.
They are defined but not universal.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
I would say that they're the other part of the support class, because we got into the long-range bombardment side, is also the equipment support, which we had mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
This is your ECM, your advanced sensor arrays, your
drone carriers.
missile beacons. There are drone carriers. The C3 computer networks, which basically allow mechs to share their firing telemetry, stuff like that.
Ah, yeah. Okay. Sort of ATACs, but huge.
Kind of.
Yeah.
There are also dedicated platforms for dealing with specific kinds of threats, which are a little harder to classify. Some mechs, like the Firestarter, are very anti-infantry mechs, for instance. They're basically equipped with a bunch of flamethrowers and 50 caliber machine guns for just clearing out people on foot. They're not terribly dangerous to other battle mechs, all things considered, but they are very, very dangerous to anyone in the trenches.
Yeah.
Right.
And
so from a roles and combat standpoint then, and not to get too far into the weeds of the actual combat tactics and stuff, because we can do that in another video.
Right.
I'm guessing that the battle mechs fulfill a role that's sort of in between helicopter and tank, where it is fire support and it's a weapons platform. It's a mobile, multi-terrain weapons platform that can kind of interact and react against like an equivalent force,
So-
but then you also have specialized roles for dealing with like an inequivalent or like infantry only force.
Yes, I would define battle mechs as a cavalry unit. They are more mobile
Okay.
and faster than a lot of tanks over a wider range of terrain. Not as fast as something like a helicopter, obviously. But they also carry far more armor than most other combat units at their speed and mobility.
Or like
Okay.
or some, like food for thought. Once helicopters came out, tank destroyers almost instantly disappeared from the battlefield because helicopters ended up filling the void left by tank destroyers.
Right.
And that's sort of where, like, battle mechs kind of killed most, like tanks.
So,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
This is a concept that I've kind of hung up on for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that makes Battletech different than most other settings is armor.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, a battle mech can carry enough armor and defenses to repel any single weapon attack. So it's very rare for a mech to go down in a single shot. This really messes with the balance of warfare because you can't assuredly put a mech down with, say, a single solid attack.
Yeah.
Okay, that's actually that's really interesting. So it's sort of the inversion of what we have today, where armor is not incredibly adequate compared to things like man-portable anti-tank weapons and things like that.
For example, once you breach the armor of a tank, there's the crew, there's the engine, there's the ammunition, all of that. Once you breach the armor of a mech, you still have to get through the myomer, the structure, the magazine, all of that to get into the sensitive bits.
So it can keep on. It can take a licking and keep on ticking, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
So, and I'm guessing from what you said, this is not only played out on the tabletop, but also in the lore and in the writing. And since this is very consistent, that there's like it's sort of not a setting-defining feature, but definitely a major point. Like a pivot that this seems to turn around.
Even like the tanks in Battletech get into what we would call heavy and super heavy classes just to compete, just to try and compete with battle mechs.
Got it.
For instance, you have the Demolisher, which is heavily armored but slow and has twin AC-20s. And its entire job...
That actually leads me to a quick question.
What's up?
With the power scaling being what it is, or tanks have to just try desperately to keep up, but tanks are so common, are battle mechs like a rare occurrence, or are they as commonplace as tanks and other weapons of war?
I would say that you could field about, say, 5 regiments of tanks for 1 regiment of mechs.
Yeah.
And 5 regiments of tanks will beat.
Okay, so they are still that's still
combat.
Fairly common then, because given the power scaling, you would expect them to be a rarer thing, but that seems about appropriate.
It's more that you can field a lot of tanks because they are fairly affordable, militarily wise. But you can outmaneuver them in very clever ways with a mech, and you need very little like infield support for a mech compared to, say, a tank. You can literally park it anywhere. You could land, a tiny little ship that carries a dozen mechs, and they can just go off through the wilderness, hit targets, disappear again, lift off and they're gone, and you maybe have like 100 people on that vessel maintaining the company of 12 mechs, compared to trying to launch, say a company of tanks where you've got 4 to 6 man crews, and you need all of the maintenance facilities. You have to have them parked properly. You have to have fuel for them. There's a lot more that goes into keeping a tank running, even though it's a lot cheaper than keeping a mech.
That's why you see installations with that kind of equipment rather than just mechs on the ready.
Yeah.
Right.
And they get brought in. If they're needed for defensive.
Like backwater garrison, well, not even backwater, like mid to like low high tier garrisons will in fact use special tanks in place of mechs as defense, specifically to avoid the costs of mechs
and the technology requirements.
Of course, yeah.
I was about to say, because you mentioned before that there's a technological, so it's not just a logistics issue, it's a technology issue where not everybody has access to the manufacturing capacity to make a mech. Like if you wanted to make an Atlas, it's probably going to take a order of magnitude more not logistics but manufacturing capacity. Whereas if you can pump out a heavy diesel internal combustion engine and weld some panels onto it.
Yeah.
Not to simplify the production of a tank, because tanks are complicated, but relevant.
Well, any backwater world could potentially engineer a tank with a little bit of support, as long as they have the ability to make a combustion engine and some armor.
Yeah.
Right.
To where that'll make several worlds worth of combined resources.
Technologically speaking, it's a whole lot easier to build up to a manufacturing standpoint of being able to pump out tanks than.
So
the tech tree is shorter.
It is to get the necessary requirements to start pumping out mechs.
For reference, I have heard.
We see that reflected, I think, with the clans, don't we?
So the clans are all about
capture.
They have very few resources, and they want to make them as effective as possible. So they over-engineer everything to get it to the absolute peak, to make best use of what little resources
I
they
see.
So they're going for the what is it, K selective instead of R selective kind of design standpoint, or they're focusing all their resources onto major set pieces that are making them really hard to kill, instead of just being like human wave tactic kind of thing.
A handful of elite weapons rather than a wide base of common weapons.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool.
For reference, I've heard like the industrial scale or the industrial base needed to replace a mech described as continent spanning, whereas a tank is maybe a few 100 acres worth of industrial base to replace.
Right.
I would say that's accurate. You also have to have resources from multiple worlds in a lot of.
Yep.
Right, because there's probably exotic materials that you're using to make things like the armor, which actually brings us right perfectly into the armor.
The armor literally has diamond worked into it, which either has to be artificially created or mined.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Thanks for the jewelry, honey.
Yeah.
I'm gonna use it to kill Capellans.
And suddenly mech charms make a lot more sense.
Wait, mech charms?
A mech charm is something many mech warriors keep with them. It is usually a shard of their first mech that got shot out from under them.
Yeah.
Probably worth a lot of money. But so it's got diamonds in it? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Does all the armor for mechs have that, or is it like a?
So there are different grades of armor. Technically, the Battletech standard armor does have diamond in it. What they call industrial grade armor, which is used on tanks, does not have the absolute impenetrable quality that Battletech armor does. Thus, whenever a shot hits a tank, it has the potential to breach internally and do damage, compared to a Battletech, which it will shrug off almost everything until the armor is penetrated.
What are the things that can penetrate? I'm thinking like rail guns or something, right?
So the Gauss rifle, which is technically a railgun, is shooting.
That's what I meant. Sorry.
Yeah. It's shooting a watermelon-sized projectile, past the speed of sound by a couple degrees.
Yeah. Hypersonic watermelon. Consider that.
We vibe with that.
Of course, there's heavy Gauss and stuff like that. Or...
Several megawatt laser cannons, particle cannons. Even the missiles, for as small and simple as they are technically doing an enormous amount of damage.
I'm guessing they're shape charged at that point then.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Small sidebar.
Yeah.
Did you see that somebody has been working on 3D printed shape charges that are smaller than like a studio microphone? They're like about the size of a small Coke can.
Oh.
And they punch straight through like an inch and a half of hardened steel.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so put that on a rocket. Carry on. Sorry, I just thought of that because of this, and I'm just imagining. Yeah, you could do a lot of damage with a little bit of explosive if you point it the right way.
Someone needs to introduce them to Wild Arms Research.
I think that they are aware of each other.
Okay.
I'm not going to say anything about that, but I think they're aware.
So I saw that there was a question about novels, and thought I would address that.
Oh yeah, this is a good time for that actually. I actually was gifted a collection of what seems to be every single Battletech novel in ebook form. And I don't know where to start.
All right. So, there's a few different possible starting points. I would say that the main trilogy novels tend to be the best starting points for given whichever part you want to look into. My personal favorite starting point is the Warrior trilogy. This is basically the large inner sphere overview of what's going on right at the beginning of the Fourth Succession War. The novels... I'm slipping in my memory a little bit. Warrior on Guard, Warrior Riposte, and Warrior...
I'm looking right at them.
Those three novels are the core overview of the Fourth Succession War. Okay. Then you have the Grey Death trilogy, which is basically the founding of the Grey Death Legion and a very good introduction to mercenaries, if you want to look into what a mercenary is and what they're kind of doing in the setting. The next trilogy I would address is the Blood of Kerensky trilogy. This is the initial clan invasion. If you want to know what all the
Thunder Rift?
That would be the first novel in the Grey Death trilogy.
Okay. Decision of Thunder Rift was the first one I attempted to read.
Okay. That basically follows the Grey Death Legion and Grayson Death Carlisle.
And I guess what I'm interested in majorly, because most of my interest with Battletech comes from the tabletop figurines themselves, less so the games, more so like the models. I love their design, I love the way they look. And then Mechwarrior 5 and Clans, which is about to come out.
Right.
So I guess what I would like to know is what to read in order to be brushed up and understand what's going on in Mechwarrior 5 Mercenaries and Clans.
All right. So I would say that the Fourth Succession War books, the Warrior trilogy, is my favorite point because it gives you the inner sphere in most of its totality at the biggest event prior to the clan invasion.
Okay.
So it's a good starting
So
point.
what's
for
going on in Mechwarrior 5 then?
Yeah. Mechwarrior 5 generally takes place between the Fourth Succession War and the Clan Invasion, at least in its original incarnation. You get some of the additions, like the Rashelhaig one, which is dealing with the War of 3039, which happens between the Fourth Succession War and the Clan Invasion. The Clan Invasion itself is best addressed in the Blood of Kerensky trilogy.
What book do I read to see Tuki in?
That will be the Blood of Kerensky trilogy, in which the Battle of Tuki takes place.
Nice.
Okay, so Warrior Trilogy and the Blood of Kerensky trilogy are the two that I should focus in on.
If you want the clan perspective, and ultimately it ends in the Battle of Tukiad, you also have the Jade Phoenix trilogy. This is following Aiden Pride, who is a principal character in the Clan Invasion and onward, up to the Battle of Tukiad.
I will say I like Aiden Pride because his preferred mech was not the Mad Cat, but the Thor.
Yes, or Summoner if you take the clan name.
I'm not a savage, so I don't.
Damn.
Is there a book trilogy for the Star League SLDF type stuff, or like a Mare Civil War? Or...
I've got a file here with about 40 books in it, and it was daunting.
Probably the FOSSA era that you have. Most of the books, the majority were written during FOSSA, and most of those take place between the Fourth Succession War and the defeat of the clans and the Jihad starting. They don't actually go into the Jihad starting. Basically, everything in that time frame was dedicated to that time frame. Most of the books written afterwards expanded other time periods, but I've found the writing quality to be dubious.
Damn.
Well,
yeah,
it's
a little harder
the Warrior trilogy and the Kerensky trilogy on my Kindle tonight. As soon as I finish up with Dragon Rise of Perm, that's gonna be what I start next.
I'm a bad boy. I still have to finish Infinite Divide. I've got about 2 hours left on the
audiobook.
audiobook.
Johan needs a week off and can't make a podcast, I'm gonna take over and we're gonna do the Dragon Rise of Perm episode.
Sweet.
Nobody's gonna know what's going on but me.
10 out of 10 on that one.
Anyway,
yes. So back to the armor. I think we were at.
Yes, specialty armors. Like all
I'm
of
guessing that they probably have
Clan Tech variants. You've got like ferrofibrous.
What is that?
Okay, so the clans use almost principally ferrofibrous armor, which is lighter per ton but bulkier than standard armor.
Okay.
Basically, it is just part of the clan edge, and the Inner Sphere had it until they basically blew up their tech base and lost it. They have since to rediscover it.
Massive, decades, if not close to a century-long wars. Yeah.
So beyond that, you have heavy armor, which is basically twice as strong for the for how much you can fit onto the mech, but it is so bulky and overlapping that it actually hinders the movement of the mech and lowers its running speed. There is stealth armor, which basically makes it harder for mech sensors to lock onto it properly. believe they even had like a cloaking device level armor very late on.
Like NSS armor? Or
like literal light shrouding armor.
Oh yeah.
It exists. I don't know anybody who really likes it. In fact, a lot of the specialty armors I don't see a lot of play with. There's like laser armor, laser refractive armor, and then there's armor that is specially made to counter missile fire
or ballistic fire.
Yeah, basically.
The problem I'm seeing with that is that most mech they don't have just a single type of weapon on them. So you're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Right. So yeah, I've very rarely seen people really use any of the specialty armors other than the weight saving or heavy or stealth. Those are really the best ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or you can go industrial armor because it's cheap, but then you get holes punched in it every time something too hard hits it.
Yeah. Then we get into equipment. We're talking.
Do we want over weapon types?
Weapon types I have in their own deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this would be like ECM, ECCM, targeting. You mentioned before there's a wide variety. I took a quick second to look. It looks like almost every equipment and weapon has multiple different sub varieties that are based off of who made it.
Yeah.
So it isn't just like a one thing. There's a ton of variety.
Technically, Battletech in general is that way. For instance, I was telling you about the AC-20. Well, the AC-20 carried by the Victor that I mentioned earlier is very different from the AC-20 of a Hunchback, which is firing 200 millimeter shells instead of 120 millimeter shells, but not as many.
Yeah.
Interesting.
There's even a tank that uses basically a gyrojet version of the same weapon system.
Oh,
So,
wait, what?
So AC-20 is a catch-all term for a whole bunch of different weapon systems that have about the same range profile and the same damage profile.
Yeah. Okay.
Equipment falls under that as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, like
so if it has system.
Yeah, if it says like for instance on the Atlas it has Duralex Special Heavy. Odds are that just means standard armor.
Yeah.
Unless it says like improved ferro fibrous armor or something wacky. It's usually just standard.
Battletech has this thing where they basically have a variety of different names and manufacturers for everything, and you can look up all the specifics and dig into it, or you can just ignore it and it doesn't affect the game at all.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting way of setting that up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, there's a difference between, say, a Quicksell medium laser and a Martel medium laser, but they both do about the same thing in principle.
Yeah. Range, damage, cooldown, duration, shit like
that. In fact,
so it's like almost every pistol caliber. They're basically the same.
Kind of.
Someone's going to fight me on that one.
You could actually see this in Mechwarrior 5, where they did a little bit of it, in that they have two different kinds of normal autocannon. You have the rapid fire, hold down the trigger one, and then you have the just pull the trigger, it fires once, and then it's done. There's
like the autocannon burst fire, and then there's the auto.
Right.
Interesting.
But technically, they would count as the same weapon in the tabletop. They just work differently, and depending on your skill, you can use them very differently.
Yeah. As, like, down to the equipment, you have ECM, which is electronic countermeasures. It jams sensors and shit. Prevents people from targeting you. You got drones. Increased, targeting and spotting. A bunch of just like odds are, if they're looking to make an addition to a modern day tank with it, they probably have a version in Battletech that you can just slap into a mech.
Okay.
They have anti-missile systems. They have laser anti-missile systems, which they're, and I'm talking like hard kill little fucking radar guided turrets that, just shoot missiles out of the fucking air.
Yeah.
You have missile guidance, like laser designators and shit.
Mm-hmm. Because you said before that they can share their firing solutions, so that makes sense that they would have things like anti. Yeah.
They also they do, and if I remember correctly, you can also use ECM to disrupt C3 systems.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. Going on.
So
from... Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to comment on what ECM would do, but I don't know if we want to get into that level of detail.
It's electronic noise broadcast on all.
I was going to say, I think we all know how signal jamming works here.
Yeah.
And this group is a little bit special in that regard.
Yeah.
But so that's super cool that they have not just it isn't just mechas beating the shit out of each other.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of a chess to it when it comes to having.
Also, one thing before I forget about
warfare.
It is tag. Like you can with C3 you can share targeting data and shit, but with tag you can designate, like, it's literally just a laser that points out shit for a missile.
Okay.
Yeah. And it also tightens spread and whatnot, so it's a kill that fucker beam, essentially.
I mean, that would work. Nothing wrong with that. I'm 100% in for that kind of thing. But
I think that about covers equipment, unless we want to get in like real specific with like life support and cockpits and yada.
I think that the neuro helmet and the cockpit and the configuration and control can be definitely its own episode if it's anywhere near as detailed as some of the stuff that I'm seeing right now.
Yeah.
Because I'm obviously zooming rapidly through Sarna Wiki, to try and keep up.
Yeah, they have.
So I'm not completely blindsided by what you guys are saying.
They have. Just look at like the technical specifications on a mech. It's mech type, inner sphere battle mech, mass 100 tons, chassis foundation type 10X, armor Duralex special heavy, engine LAR 300, communication system, targeting, heat sinks. Yeah.
And most of those are links so that you can keep
I'm sorry, you go ahead.
We can definitely.
Yeah.
I think we could definitely have that as its own. The control and command system is its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right, well, what's fascinating about that part with me too is the corporations, the companies that are making all these parts, all exist within the lore and all have a part to play within the overall story. And like coming from the standpoint of like I've built Navy ships on a shipyard that was owned by a company that dealt with a union that had the politics of dealing with the Navy. And so like from that perspective, like just the day-to-day politics of the people building this stuff is fascinating to me. I don't think there's as much lore about that kind of thing as say Warhammer would have about that kind of thing with Factoriums and whatnot, but that's where my brain goes when I start hearing about all the technical details that they've built into the lore as is.
Also, then
space
you just
AT&T and all that.
No, then you literally have like General Motors and Nissan. Yeah.
Yep.
GM,
Yeah.
they make a hell of an auto.
GM, Boeing, Nissan, and freaking Lockheed Martin.
Well, it's kind of like Rolls-Royce building aircraft engines in World War II, so why not?
Mm-hmm. Or Ford selling trucks to literally everyone.
Every. Wasn't there literally an advertisement for the Toyota Hilux that it was a technical?
I think that was a meme.
Was it a meme? I hope it wasn't a meme. I know that their plan was to make a vehicle that could handle 10 years in the middle of a really...
This is a hell of a
third world
tangent, but we
country.
can keep going on it. I want to talk about the $10,000 Toyota truck that we can't get in America.
I don't...
No.
Oh, I will scream.
We'll go into that
No.
Yeah, we'll go into that after.
No.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking about technicals, what makes a technical a technical?
Weapons.
Exactly.
Good transition.
Yes.
So
So
for
the
weapons...
question is, what do you want to strap onto your truck?
Yes.
Right.
That's how it goes with mechs too. Oddly enough.
I was saying, or in this case, mechs.
Yeah.
I'm noticing that there's kind of... So they have ballistic kinetic, then they have the various missile weapons, and then they have energy, like direct energy weapons like lasers. Is there any kind of really weird stuff besides flamethrowers, because we already talked about those, that's like a weapon that maybe isn't iconic for the setting, but is something that's like you don't really see that in mech?
In a mech, two or three things. The long tom, which is literally just a giant fucking howitzer, which I think you can put in an Atlas. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Artillery pieces are rare in mechs, but yes.
Okay, yeah. You don't really see, Gundams lugging around howitzers, so it's like...
You don't see, like, dedicated anti-air on almost any other universe, really.
Yeah, you got...
Oh, so this does have, like, an anti-air...
Yeah, the Rifleman.
Really?
Yeah, it's got, like, a dedicated anti-air, like, targeting suite and all that shit.
So, the AC-2 and its subsequent weapons are almost completely useless against other mechs unless you're just trying to ping at their armor until you do something useful. But against aircraft, they are a nightmare.
Yes. You can knock aircraft out of the sky from fuck you distances, essentially.
And so I saw this is AC-2, and then there's the AC-20. Is that kind of a definitional thing of how much damage it does or how much threat it has? Okay.
Tabletop game, the number after an autocannon determines how much damage it does.
And also usually its range.
It usually is an indicator of range as well.
Yeah. AC-2, longest range.
I'm not going to lie, this whole time I thought it was how many rounds it fired.
Well, we're learning something new. But that's super interesting. So it's kind of baked into...
And that's what I thought it did.
No, Salty. Just because I put 10 AC-20s on that one mislinks does not mean an AC-20 fires 20 rounds. Anyway.
It's super duper interesting, though.
Well, I figured that out after I put him on chain fire, but...
Anyway.
I'm not even going to ask how you fit that many AC-20s onto it.
Cheat sinks. It's a mod. I cheat, but it's fun, so...
So, yeah, you were saying anti-air and then indirect fire. Because the long-tom cannon, it says, is technically an indirect fire piece.
Yes. All missile weapons... all long-range missile weapons and all artillery pieces are capable of indirect fire, meaning you can spot for them and then fire from basically wherever that's in range.
Interesting. because I can't really imagine, or I can't think of many examples of indirect fire being used and guided weapons fire as indirect fire being used in a tabletop game that isn't sort of like an edge case. Like, I know that at one point I did that as a player in D&D because I had a bow that could arc, and I just indirect fired people around corners and stuff. But I can't imagine that's like a very common thing in tabletop games. A lot of times they have almost like a flatland mindset.
No,
That's really interesting.
Battletech, like maps and landscapes, actually have like cover and all kinds of shit.
An elevation,
landscape, and yeah,
that's
Buildings.
really neat. Yeah, and buildings, I imagine.
Mm-hmm. I feel like we should list the weapons. Just
That's a lot of weapons to list.
yeah, just to give you a feel for what we're talking about. So, let's start with the ballistics, shall we? You have the standard AC2 to AC20, you know.
Mm-hmm.
2 damage long range, 5 damage, AC5, 5 damage, slightly less long range.
Mm-hmm.
AC10, which is kind of like the middle of the road.
Okay, so that's
like,
not the standard, but sort of the
damage
middle.
and range. Yeah, it's like an M4, but you know,
Yeah.
like it's the M4 of the BattleTech universe.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the AC20, which, again, correct me if I'm wrong, is essentially the, you know, shotgun of BattleTech, outside of actual shotguns.
Well, okay, so on that note, the LBX version
Yes.
of any of these weapons fires cluster munitions or standard munitions, which is effectively your choice between a slug or a, you know, birdshot shotgun.
Yeah.
Buckshot.
Interesting.
Yeah. Oh, it's so fun messing around.
And then I
with
see that there's
kind of
things
stuff.
like hypervelocities and heavier versions, caseless versions of these.
Yes.
So
I'm guessing that this is sort of
yes.
the minutia of it is and how they play.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, specialty autocannon ammos are available. I don't believe anything other than standard autocannons can use them, but they give you a wide range of variety in whatever gun you choose to use.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
then I see that there's a couple of different versions of the Gauss rifle, and I heard that mentioned before as being a terrifying weapon that could do horrible things.
It is the M200 intervention from Modern Warfare 2.
It's sort of a...
It is long-range melon explosion.
This is the one that you mentioned could punch through even the hardened armor, right?
Yeah.
The Gauss rifle has one of the highest damage capacities in a single shot of any weapon in the game, but it also is extremely heavy and extremely bulky.
Got it.
Yes.
That would make sense, because it's a Gauss weapons. You have to have all that magnetics.
Unless you want to get into... I'm sorry, I talked over you. What was that?
Oh, I was saying that you only get like 8 shots in a ton of ammunition.
Yeah.
Jeez.
For Gauss weapons, you can also get into like improved heavy Gauss, silver bullet Gauss,
right?
Or you know, hags, which are
basically it's a
hyper assault Gauss cannon.
It's the shotgun concept, but applied to a Gauss rifle.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
So one thing we talked about, I think we mentioned it wasn't in Mechwarrior 5 when I brought it up last time we were playing Mechwarrior 5. They don't seem to have any kind of like targeting system built onto them. Like you don't see mechs go out without like in positions for recon, like limited to no weapons with a laser targeting system for an orbital bombardment, or like you don't see roles like that.
Okay, so this goes into a bit of the lore, but
Yeah.
Essentially put, jump ships were classified by the Ares Convention as non-targets, specifically because humanity didn't want to just blow itself back to the Stone Age. As such, they weren't allowed to.
Okay, so this ties back into like nukes and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing.
Also, like actual warships kind of went the way of the dodo after the first or second Succession War.
Yes.
Yeah,
Except for the clans who still had them, and when they came back, they brought a bunch with them, and that was a mess.
You forgot someone.
Well, there is Comstar, and by extension, Ward of Flake, but they also pretended they didn't have them, so as to keep them secret.
Pay your phone bill, fucko.
They also had a nasty habit of finding out whenever anybody did discover one and then going and blowing it up.
Well, when you own
to maintain monopoly.
No, when you own all of like interstellar FTL comms, yeah, you're gonna know.
You dip your ear.
God, I'd be fascinated to read about how that technology works in universe.
I believe
like
it
FTL
is
comms?
basically a pulse of energy in a compressed data packet using a similar technology to the Kearney-Fushida jump drive.
Okay.
Yeah, so
basically imagine a warp drive on a planet that just shoots energy at warp speeds to other planets.
So similar to like how, I don't know if you anybody would know this, but like how Altered Carbon does it.
Nope. Never heard of it. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's one for the listeners then.
Think like slip space comms from Halo, essentially.
Yeah,
so they're basically skipping it at FTL speed.
Yeah,
okay.
They're shooting it into FTL and receiving it in FTL, essentially.
Okay.
Alright, we've gone over most of the ballistics, unless you want to get into the weird shit.
Nobody cares about rifles anyway.
No, isn't there like a proto-cannon thing or whatever?
So there are mortars and there are rifles, which are basically primitive weapons.
Okay.
Which are the closest thing to modern day, artillery pieces, tank munitions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait.
Yeah.
Did you say chemical lasers earlier?
There are chemical lasers, but I think we hadn't gotten as far as lasers yet.
Okay, no,
right.
like you said,
there's a chemical
something
rocket, like a gyrojet thing.
Oh, there's
he did mention gyrojets.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. We'll go on.
Yeah, I think that's all for the ballistics.
Let's go the middle ground and go PPCs, because those are fun too. You know the Large Hadron Collider in like CERN?
I'm aware of it relatively.
Imagine that turned into a cannon.
I see.
That's essentially what it is, right?
So
that will do
they're
things.
Firing accelerated particles at you.
Yeah,
yes.
And it is best compared, from what I've heard, to a lightning strike, and outputs a fuckload of EM energy. Like it will, like if you shoot someone with a PPC, you will scramble their targeting systems.
And this is the one that I call the dub cannon in game.
I think so, yeah. Shoots the little
dub
bright
as in
white
rain or
bolt.
dub as in dubstep.
Dub as in dubstep.
Yeah.
I got you.
Yeah.
Essentially,
it sounds fucking cool.
Yeah.
It will disrupt electronics. It basically shoots particles so small as to punch between materials and thus penetrate very deeply into armor and subsystems and anything else it touches.
Yeah.
It's technically able to bypass armor, which is why it's so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
It will also raise like heat capacity as well, which if you shoot enough, if you shoot someone enough with a PPC, you could cook them in their own mech.
Well, not in the tabletop game. That was something that they gave to the what is it called? The plasma cannon.
I might be wrong then.
Yeah, the PPC doesn't cause heat on the target generally.
Yeah.
The plasma cannon does, but it works very similar to a PPC.
There are variants of the PPC. There is light, heavy, snub-nosed, and then also capacitors, like PPC capacitors and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Which extends charge.
I'm guessing those are pieces of equipment to improve the charge speed or something?
Yes, that's what PPC capacitors are. What they do mechanically is they increase charge time, but also increase damage output.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Like, in Mechwarrior 5, one of the highest damaging weapons I've seen that wasn't like an Arrow 4 was a heavy cat PPC. That's how... Yeah.
Okay.
Moving on from PPCs, you have lasers.
Awesome.
Which...
I love me a good directed energy weapon like this.
To my knowledge, they're different from what we use today in, like, DEM SHORAD, in that they are, like, straight direct energy lasers.
Yeah, you're beating somebody to death with photons. I love it.
Yeah. You have 3 sizes: small, medium, and large.
And then it appears to be a bunch of different sub-variants, like chemical and extended range and all this other stuff.
Chemical, from what I understand, you're sacrificing weight and like longevity of being able to fire it for heat and energy.
Oh, so it has almost like a thermal clip kind of thing going on.
So essentially, a chemical laser was an early version of the laser, which uses an actual ammo in order to achieve the same effect.
It's what we use today.
Right.
Like the Navy's Helio system that they're developing, that's a chemical laser.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other interesting laser I would point out is pulse lasers, which effectively have a longer firing duration and fire in a series of pulses rather than a single beam, as a way of getting through armor more efficiently. It is much shorter range, but also much more accurate because you can kind of drag it into your target and keep it there.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're also,
and funny thing is, pulse lasers are actually a real thing.
Yeah, they also make them anti-infantry, don't they?
Oh no.
Generally, yes, pulse lasers are very effective against infantry and will have a similar effect to machine guns.
Generally, is there a time when they aren't?
Large pulse lasers are not in that same bracket.
Oh, that makes sense.
Well, but, it's a bigger, more cumbersome thing, and it's harder to keep on target, where the smalls and mediums are pretty easy to just fix into an area.
Yeah, that's fair. Not much else I can think of for lasers.
Is there any other really weird standout ones? I said, is there any other really weird standout lasers? Anything that's like we would go, oh, what? The laser does that?
lasers are kind of the standard weapon in that they have the least interesting effects and are the most basic in the form and function of them.
Yeah.
So they're kind of the yardstick by which every other weapon is measured.
That's so funny because, again, when you're a spacefaring civilization, it makes sense to use lasers instead of kinetic weapons for your baseline for a variety of different logistical reasons. So it's so funny to see that appears to be repeated either intentionally or unintentionally for the aesthetic over several different properties, like even Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. It's
not science fiction, it's science fantasy, but we're not going to talk about that.
And like 70s hard science fiction, it's a norm there too.
Yeah,
that is a well ingrained science fiction trope.
Yep. And it's a trope that I think should be there, and I'm happy that it seems to have quite a bit of longevity.
Lasers are so popular because going back to the las gun of 40K fame, they're logistically perfect.
Yes, and also aesthetically. I mean, like, everybody loves drawing cool laser beams. I mean, even as a kid, you drew laser beams. Everybody drew laser beams.
I drew M4s shooting laser beams. Who didn't?
Oh, I gotta tell you about that later.
Yeah,
remind me. There's a really wacky story about that kind of shit. But
there are plasma weapons.
Yes, I was about to say there are heat-inducing weapons because I know you mentioned that.
Yes.
That's kind of interesting to me because I love weird edge cases like this, even if they're not commonly used, like the stealth armor and all these other things, because it's just a look into the designer saying, this would be cool.
Oh, yeah. And I'm not clear as to all of the variations of plasma weapons, so... Yeah, they melt shit and they create heat.
Which makes sense. So they're basically flamethrowers, but for mecha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they do have the actual flamer, which is just a plasma jet, versus the plasma rifle, which is basically a charged mass of plasma being lobbed at a distance.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Is there like a plasma cannon, or does it not go that far?
Well, the plasma rifle is a close equivalent to the PPC as far as range and damage output, and that's really kind of the high end of energy weapons, so I think it's kind of the limit until you get to force.
I'm unclear as to what plasma is, because it's a vague term in the sense that, like, fire,
superheated
any kind of flamethrower is superheated ionized gas is what it is in this context. Okay.
Actually, I think it's plasma is created by using lasing process to flash cartridges of plastic foam, interesting, into white hot projectiles that cause thermal as well as physical damage. It's foam? That's super cool. That's a clever idea.
Yeah. Like plasma weapons do require.
So you're melting styrofoam and throwing the resulting.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's just when the loading process, you just get a bunch of packing peanuts.
Oh dear.
Sorry, the mental image of that.
I'm just imagining like really hot marshmallow, like the liquid marshmallow shit you get in the jar, but really hot, just being flung at someone.
I'm imagining it's like essentially like vaporizing the shit and then charging.
Well, because that's all you want is the ions. It doesn't matter where you get them from.
I'm imagining it's a bit like the like if you were to make a Kasaba howitzer, you need some sort of catalyst. And to focus all of like the radiation into, and that's I'm imagining what that's what the styrofoam entails.
Yeah, it's a target for the lasing.
Yep.
That's super cool though. Okay, so that's our heat-inducing weapons. We already talked about Gauss weapons. I think the next one is either missile or melee.
missiles. Because melee is pretty simple. But missiles are fun. At least, well, I like one specific category of them, and that's the SRM.
So,
but that's the monkey brain.
SRM, MRM, and LRM are the distinctions, right?
Not to mention
distinction based on range.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Well, there is a little more, but I'll get into that in a sec.
Yeah. I was about to say, I'm
so
sure
on missiles is the number after what actually designates how many are in it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I wasn't completely wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I just thought it applied everywhere else too.
Yeah.
Fair.
No. Yeah. Mm.
All right. So, missiles.
Mm-hmm.
SRMs, MRMs, and LRMs are fairly self-explanatory in short range, medium range, long range. But there are a few other differences that are kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. SRMs are basically meant to spread out and hit as many places as possible to try and find a weak point. Yeah. So SRMs are shot in packs of 2, 4, or 6, and the missiles are heavier. They do a little bit more damage than the MRMs or LRMs, and they're really only meant for close in use. They're also very
These are what I like to load my Irby with as many as possible, and then just push in and remove limbs with.
He likes the UMs. Is the 28 or 68 or 27? The UM27. Anyway,
okay.
The 68's actually the main one that I use.
Yeah. Anyway,
so MRMs are the next one. Strangely enough, because MRMs didn't exist for a while, but.
I thought they were like Battletech or something.
Well, no, I'll get to it, and it's kind of funny what they exactly are.
All right, yeah.
LRMs are fired in larger clusters, 5 to 20, and they're generally tried to be fired in close groups so that as many of them hit as possible. Mm-hmm. This was made as a method of countering anti-missile systems by shooting so many shots at a target that the anti-missile system can't keep up. They are made to fire indirectly if you need to, and they're only semi-guided. They don't actually have a solid target lock.
So their original intention was to fill a role similar to flares on a fighter plane?
No, the opposite.
More like the inverse.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like a dual warhead kind of situation where they're trying to overcome the countermeasure by just mass.
Well, no, imagine, if you will, like an AIM-9 that, like, avoids flares by splitting into, like, 3 or 4 other
20
missiles. Yeah, 20.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Okay, and there are actually Thunderbolt LRMs, which are essentially one missile that does the damage of the full group. But they are very rarely used, mainly because countermeasures are so effective.
Yeah.
Now, MRMs are kind of a weird case. The Draconis Combine, which we've mentioned earlier, basically decided we need something
House of the Dragon?
cheap.
Yes.
Yeah. So they basically strapped as many missiles together, attached them to iron sights, and then just fire them off in waves.
Oh no. It's a fucking Hwacha.
Yeah. Well, almost. There's a closer approximation. The rocket launchers are basically exactly that. They are literally no loading mechanisms, no nothing. You just point a wall of missiles at something and fire them and hope they hit.
Yeah.
And
that
once
is
fired, it's gone.
It's one sec. Check lobby.
So that's kind of what the MRMs are.
Yeah.
When House Steiner starts fielding too many AMS systems.
Yep. The periphery likes the rocket launchers the best. Kurita just apparently has more munitions than they have targeting systems.
Yeah. That
Understandable.
tracks.
Targeting systems are difficult, man. They're hard to get and hard to
True.
tune.
So then we get to two other missile systems which are a little more infrequent. The MML and the ATM.
Mhm.
The MML is basically a missile launcher that shoots short or long-range missiles, and that's about the extent of it.
Okay.
The ATM is the clan's version of this, where they said, you know what, we can do better than this. And they shoot either SRMs that have even more explosive charge than the standard, or LRMs that have double the charge of the standard, or super long-range missiles that just do the standard LRM damage.
Okay. Yeah, that's a bit different how they than how yet another mech lab implements it.
Mm-hmm.
But we could probably get into that later. But yeah, that's I love the clans so much. Like I hate them, they're assholes, but they're just so goofy.
There is a certain weird logic that they follow.
Yeah. Well, how do we make missiles more effective? More explosives! Won't that make them shorter range? Fuck if I know.
Yeah, it's...
I've
seen some other stuff like cruise missiles. Are these like these are more capital ship, warship kind of weaponry?
Arrow 4, among other things.
The Arrow 4 is closer to a cruise missile. There are warship missile systems too, but I don't see a point in getting into those right now.
Yeah, this is Battletech, or this is Battle Mech.
Battle Mech. Yeah.
There's keep in mind all of the weapons we've mentioned, I think, have warship equivalents.
Okay.
But it's whatever. Are there any other missiles?
I think we covered everything worth noting.
Narc? Isn't that a thing?
Oh. The Narc is basically a support subsystem. It's a single missile that, instead of doing any damage, just latches on and starts beeping for other missiles to track.
Yeah.
It's basically a tag in missile form.
Yeah. It's that one bee that stabs you to let the others know to come and stab you.
Yep.
That covers the missiles. Let's get on to melee weapons. Which can vary. Sometimes, not always. Most melee weapons.
What's the weirdest one? I want to know about the weirdest one.
Oh no, we're going to go into this.
My only experience is from Mechwarrior 5, yet another mech lab. So.
All right, so we've got two primary ones, which are the hatchet and the sword. The hatchet does more damage, the sword is more accurate. But then, of course, there is the nightmare fuel that is the Jihad, as well as whatever they could come up with on Solaris, which means that there are flails, chainsaws, maces. They've got one that's like
Alf.
Like an Assassin's Creed blade for some reason.
Yeah.
Go look up the cudgel.
Yeah, I don't
It's
actually
just a
see a point.
Spiky
in
fist?
Huh?
It's a giant spiky fist.
It's a mech that's built around giant spiky fists.
Oh, this is a mech. I thought this was the weapon. Oh no. I'm sorry. I saw in melee weapons combine, like an agricultural tool.
Technically, it is just an agricultural tool that somebody decided to try and weaponize.
It does 3 damage. This is what I meant. I was like, what is the weirdest one?
Don't they have shields?
There are shields. You almost never see them. They basically protect only the arm they're on until they're like positioned differently, and then they protect more of the mech, but at the expense of stopping you from shooting your own weapons. So generally, unless you're running some max armored machine, there's not a lot of point to them.
Yes, run the tank with the ECM. There you go. Yeah, like I said, there's the Kuritan katana, and there's maces and clubs and trench fists and all that shit. But most of the time, you'll see hand actuators / battle fists, or what is it, like club fist or whatever the fuck.
Okay.
Or if you're feeling inventive and playing the tabletop, you can just pull up a tree and hit them with it.
That's a thing?
Yes.
Suppose you could do so, yes. I'm terrified by the thought of that, but...
Yeah, the battle mech do have rules for just picking up a tree or an enemy mech's arm and just beating it with it.
That's obscene. I love it.
Oh, we almost forgot jump jets.
Yeah, can't forget jump jets.
Jump jets.
Tell me, Victor, what else can you do with jump jets other than jump?
Well, there have been examples of attacking with jump jets.
Oh no.
Yeah, just, it kind of works like a flamer. You're basically just pointing a plasma stream at somebody and, letting loose.
Yeah,
Death from above is fairly common tactic, which is, essentially, I can jump.
Goomba stomp planet.
Is it a Goomba stomp? I was about to say, are you ground pounding?
Yep. In fact, one of the famed moves of a certain assault mech, the Highlander Burial, involves dropping a 95-ton mech on top of the nearest enemy. Or was it 90? It might be 90.
I stomped a Centurion with an Irby the other night. It was amazing.
You know what? I can't say anything because that's totally a thing that I think most sci-fi doesn't get right, is that if you have a big enough thruster on the back of your ship, you have a particle weapon now.
Yep.
All you have to do is just turn it around and point it at somebody. So I totally get this. That's terrifying.
Hello, sir.
That was definitely underused. I would love to see that in a base combat scenario too.
Oh no, it's the.
I think Star Sector actually can let you do damage with your thrusters.
Nice. I'll have to try that.
It's super fun.
It's the hello, sir. Would you like to see my fusion torch?
Yeah. I'm just trying to imagine 95 tons landing on something like intentionally from.
It's called a burial.
A couple of 100 meters in the air.
I don't think they go that high.
I mean, they're 14 meters tall, so that's.
Each jump jet provides about 30 meters worth of propulsion for the mech that it's on. So 4 jump jets means it can jump 120 meters into the air.
Oh no.
Yeah, that sounds about.
I'm just imagining 95 tons, 120 meters in the air, and I'm doing the grav math on that. I'm like,
Yeah.
And this is why
9 point something meters per second.
Yeah. What was that, Vic?
Oh, this is why meomers are important. If you didn't have that musculature, you probably wouldn't stick that landing super well.
No.
There'd be a lot of bent things.
Yeah. Which is why Gundam is bullshit. Anyway.
Well, Gundams are actually made of tissue paper once you do the math on them.
Or foam.
Okay, so I was talking with a dude on Twitter. Apparently, a large laser puts out the same amount of energy as a fucking battleship grade weapon in fucking Gundam.
Yep. That would be Ganglo-Saxon, I believe.
Yeah. He's cool.
But did we get through? I think that's all the weapons then, including.
Yeah.
Is there any other weird weaponry? Something to kind of end it on with the weapon segment of just like, okay, what is this? Why does this exist? And it's hilarious. Besides the jump jets, because that's nuts.
Do they have like a harpoon or anything like that?
No, generally Battletech steers away from the absolutely ridiculous, unless you're talking about some of the weird periphery nonsense. I think using a combine to attack someone is about as insane as you get.
That's so silly.
I do think they have cattle prods for these like mech-sized cattle that exist.
Oh no.
Hey, what?
Yeah,
that's a shocking development.
Oh.
Yeah, imagine taking your 20-ton war machine out to put everybody out to pasture.
Yeah. Like, you're scratching the paint. That's expensive.
Camacho's Caballeros have a couple novels about it, and they're basically just like ranchers who decided to become mech warriors.
Yep.
Oh no.
I do feel that this is the perfect time to do a short bit on battle.
Okay.
Mini-mechs, essentially. It's my understanding, it's essentially like Fallout 4 style power armor, but a little bit bulkier. They
not a bad application.
Yeah. They have very small mech grade weapons or infantry grade weapons. Like the most well-known example, the elemental armor from the clans, which I forgot to say this, I should have. When you say clan tech, you mean alien tech. Period.
Really?
Yeah. That's what the clans
so
are meant to
aliens
be.
do come into play somewhere. Cool.
They are the clans. The clans are not technically aliens. They are filling the same role.
Oh, so it's sort of the divergence of far-flung colony kind of vibe?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, very short primer on the clans. A long time ago, a bunch of people who were part of the Star League army left, found their way into deep space, colonized a few worlds, and then 200 years later they showed back up.
Yep. They are essentially modeled after like a mixture of Mongolian, Maoist, and a bunch of other like ancient Terran history societies.
And they are also survivalist.
Anyway, back to battle armor. And a good example of battle armor is the clan elemental armor, which has a medium laser, a battle claw, and SRM2s.
Well, so which one of these can I drive with a forklift certification?
Yes.
You probably actually could drive a battle armor with forklift certification.
Like what kind of mechs are serving logistical roles, I guess?
Oh, that was the industrial.
I assume that we're sorry, this is probably a tangent. We're not ready to transition into that yet, huh?
Yeah, they have industrial mechs and shit like that, and
yeah,
I would assume like industrial battle armor. But
interesting.
Unequivalent.
Yeah.
I think that about covers everything. Well, to say this, battle armor, one thing I forgot to say, they fill a gap between infantry and either tanks or mechs. It's hard to tell which one, because tanks are kind of their own thing in the Battletech universe, Mechs are kind of their own thing in the Battletech universe, and infantry, by and large, is usually powerless to stop either one.
And so this is sort of the response to that sort of vacuum, that need to have people that can fit inside doorways.
Yeah.
It's high survivability infantry with anti-vehicle weapons.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, and then being able to, I can see them probably being really useful in urban combat.
Extraordinary.
Clan elementals are super fucking scary to fight in numbers.
They will actually jump onto a mech and use their claws to rip the armor open.
And the pilot out.
I bet
Piece by
they're
piece, I'm assuming.
employed in a stationary security type positions as well, like used to guard bases and whatnot.
Yeah.
I've heard some anecdotes about law enforcement type rangers or similar stuff being having battle armor and stuff. But yeah, that about covers it. Battle mechs. Giant stompy murder robots.
Yeah, giant too. Not just large.